On today's reunion of sorts edition of the Grind Hours podcast, which is filled with sports, again, finally, with a caveat. I've got the Hall of Famer, Nick Parodies, who's went MIA from this podcast because of work and moving in and getting a new car and just, like I said in the last episode, I don't want to say the pandemic has been kind to you because that's just inconsiderate to a bunch of people around the country and around the world who have been affected for various reasons because of this pandemic. But you've been chilling during during the pandemic.
I would describe myself as I've been very, very fortunate. I have an essential job, so there hasn't been a need for me to leave the workforce. I've been able to continue my employment and really go about a semi-normal life. Moving had been in the works for a while. I'm glad that it was able to happen. I'm very happy in this new place. I have a great roommate. I have, it's the better than I could have ever imagined it being. And then the car was an unfortunate circumstance. As you know, my beloved 2007 Chevy Cobalt was totaled in an accident that I was very fortunate in that I was able to walk away from, because it was pretty scary when it was happening. But I've got a great new car. I've got same model year, same company, but it's a Pontiac G6, which is, for those who aren't aware, it's a really nice car. For those who aren't aware, so the G6 was the 6th generation Grand Am, so it's their mid-size sedan. And it's pretty sporty. It's got like a little fin on the back. It's got some nice features inside. It's got an aftermarket radio, which is really cool. You didn't see any USB ports and Bluetooth on 2007 models except like luxury cars. But
right.
I have them because whoever had it before me installed the aftermarket radio. And we got it. I got it for my dad, and I took out the loan together so that I could boost my credit while also having the security of easy approval. And we were able to get it for a really great price. It only had 91,000 miles. Whoever owned it before me
didn't drive it too much.
Didn't drive it too much, and it was a repo car.
Huh.
So he was delinquent on his payments. So the dealer lot got it, and I was able to get a great price as a result.
As much as you and I had fantastic moments in your Chevy, I'm looking forward to sitting passenger in the Pontiac or in the back seat of the Pontiac if the Cuz or Tim is in the passenger seat. But
there will be great times ahead, I promise.
Yeah.
You.
Oh yeah.
I will say too, I have fully become a GM man as a result of this. It's Chevys for me, Cadillacs, Pontiacs forever.
If I have to choose a luxury vehicle, I'm going Caddy. As much as the Malcolm Gladwell podcast series about Lexus, Go and See, has made me a Lexus man, I will forever be, like, my first love for luxury cars was Caddy.
I think every young American kid loved Caddies first. I mean, everybody remembers Ludacris on top of my Escalade. Everybody remembers that.
Moving on from, a transition in life to a transition in sports and in the country.
Yes.
You were a part of did you go to the second protest in Middletown?
I wasn't able to go to that one. I was working that night.
Or the third one that shut down to 11, which is another conversation for another day, but that's insane if you're
that was wild
to see 211 just completely shut down by protests. Shout out to the people who went to the protest and were involved in it. That's incredible. And I stopped. I literally stopped what I was doing, and I was like, they shut down. Like, that's, to try to compare that, to me, is like shutting down a lane of a highway.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that I can compare it to someone who doesn't live around where we live. And I'm in Long Island right now, so trying to explain. I mean, my girlfriend's been upstate, but to her parents and to the people and her friends around here, it's like the only thing that I can compare it to is like shutting down a lane of a highway
I mean,
completely.
it's really insane, man. It's something that we've never seen up here before, obviously, and it was an incredible experience to be part of these things and to be part of this movement. And the it was just a beautiful thing to see all these different people, all counter cause or important cause, for something that's really going to define our generation for years to come, for decades to come. As we were the ones who took a stand about this important issue, and we were the ones who went out and tried to make a positive change. And it's just beautiful. Like hearing the speeches are beautiful. Everybody's so well spoken, so honest about what they want. We just want to create a better world for young kids and for people, no matter who you are or where you come from. To it's a civil rights fight, and it's amazing it's amazing to have been part of it.
I was going to ask you that about the hope, if you had any, from the protest that you went to, because I went to zero. I mean, I've
Mhm.
known, again, I've said it on the previous podcast. I know dozens of people who've went to protests, who have participated in um, trying to change the injustice in this country, and had conversations with a couple of my friends who are black, and how their experiences are and how they're trying to progress this movement and how I can help. So as
Mhm.
someone who went there, and I'm sure you've talked to people as well, are you hopeful? Because there is a part of me that is skeptical. That's like, I don't think this is going, as amazing as this is, and how it is a moment in time, and it's going to be a specific, or a historic moment in time.
Mhm.
I want to believe in the change, but as someone who hasn't been to the protest, who's only watched it through social media and through other people, do you
I
think
would say
this is different than before?
I would say I was a lot like you. I mean, it's going to sound crazy coming from me, because you know me as well as anybody. I am
Right,
very cynical.
right.
I am usually the skeptic on this show whenever anything happens. But I think it was impossible to come away from at least the protests I was at, which, again, everybody came together. It was all peaceful. You know, it was all about making the statement. It was kind of impossible to come away from that not changed and not hopeful. And I think that, I mean, I think we're seeing positive changes already with the way, like Minnesota's police department banned usage of chokeholds and all these different things, and the way that we've seen police departments around the country start up these policies where it makes it a crime for another officer to stand there while these things are happening. And seeing civilian review boards pop up, I think we are seeing positive change. And, like, obviously we've still got a long way to go. The fight is not, and that's my worry, is that this might die out, and it can't die out. We have to keep fighting the good fight. But I'm hopeful that things can change. Absolutely.
I mean, I take a word from the Tony Kornheiser show, which I think this was yesterday's episode, where he said, it's quarantine. No one has, not a lot, there's people that are laid off that don't have to go to
Mm-hmm.
jobs. There's no school. So, I mean, this is hitting, there's no perfect time for this to hit a turning point, or to be pushed to the point of no return, and the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak. But there is nothing to go to. There is no, oh, I have to go. For majority of people, oh, I have to go to work. I can't talk about this right now. Or, hey, I got this going on in my life. No one really has much going on in their lives. So
Mm-hmm.
this is driving. the social conversation. That's a perfect transition into the first topic that I want to talk about.
Hmm.
Kaepernick being the catalyst and for the entire movement for the NFL, and then the
Hmm.
NFL's or Goodell's complete switch up from year and a half, 2 years ago, from
Hmm.
when Cap first took a knee in an NFL game, and then the Trump SOB tweet and all the stuff at his rallies. Trump went on it and said that he's standing by discarding the flag, and this is an anti-America protest.
Hmm.
And then the Drew Brees comments, and then him walking it back twice with the PR sort of apology, and then the message to Trump specifically about having the conversations with people of color. What I want to talk to you about here is Goodell, we have trashed from the moment that
Hmm.
we had a mic in front of our face, and and um and we're allowed to express our opinions. We have completely threw Goodell into the wood chipper. Everything that he has done, we've scrutinized, we have said was the wrong decision. And recently, and this is how crazy 2020 is
Hmm.
I'm now saying publicly twice that I agree with what Goodell is doing. And whether or not it is completely sincere and 100% real
Hmm.
will be remain to be seen with the NFL season and how the players, if they do decide to protest, are reprimanded if they are at all. The actions of the players will be determined by the policies of the league. And if they're still saying we're going to either fine you or we're going to suspend you or you're going to have some sort of punishment for taking a knee during the anthem, will remain to be seen once games actually happen. But as of right now, there is a statement on Twitter by, or a video circling through Twitter from Goodell that is completely walking everything from the situation that happened 2 years ago completely back. And
Yeah.
it seems like a complete change of heart from Goodell. And I don't, again, we're skeptics at heart, just because of how we were raised and the teachers that we had in high school, at least for me. But
And especially when it comes to Roger Goodell, I mean, his
right.
track record does not lend him much, if any, credibility.
No, it doesn't lend him any. He has no wiggle room when it comes down to executive decisions.
But
Maybe
I am glad that like I said with you, I can't believe that I'm praising something Roger Goodell did, but I'm very glad that he had this come to Jesus moment about it, so to speak. Like that I'm glad that he sees that this is right and this is justified. And it would be a great way to really show that he's got the message is to help bring Colin Kaepernick back into the league.
well, I was gonna bring that up, and there's been people who have already brought up that point. Is if the NFL really truly feels this way, then Kaepernick should be signed by a team, and that is
Mm-hmm.
the only way to start to progress the NFL's involvement in the Black Lives Matter movement and really
Because
get the.
finally the original injustice will have been undone. That this guy was blackballed.
I don't know if it's undone. It will the process of undoing the mistake of blackballing this man and the admission of fault and the change. The NFL can lead the change in this country because
Mm-hmm.
like no other sport, they own a day of the week and it is a religion in this country.
Mm-hmm.
Football is the number one sport, bar none.
Yeah.
Basketball is a 12-month-a-year sport. It is ingrained into the culture of this country, but nothing grabs this country like football. High
Mm-hmm.
school, college, or the NFL, they own a day of the week, and they will always own a day of the week as long as football exists.
Mm-hmm.
So
Collectively, they own a whole weekend because you got
right,
Friday night lights, you got college football Saturdays, and then you got the NFL.
and then you got Monday Night Football and
Yeah,
Thursday. So
yeah.
they own when it's football season. That's and I've said this before, and I sound like a broken record. That's the cash cow here
Mm-hmm.
in sports. So
They take a stand, and everyone else follows. Listen, like even 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 NASCAR is taking a stand.
right,
There's no excuse for the NFL.
I asked you this: where does the NFL go from here?
As far as where the NFL goes, I mean, I don't think it's I nobody is questioning the fact that there's going to be some sort of protest during the season. There's going to be players taking a knee, probably. And I would be shocked if you don't see whole teams that are taking a knee. I think that will happen. And
I
then
think
if
the
the
entire
owners are
league will.
smart, because if the owners are smart, even if like, I mean, you'd have to be an idiot to not see which way the wind is blowing on this issue. If the owners are smart, even if they don't agree, they'll keep their mouths shut. Behind closed doors, who knows what may leak out if we'll end up with the NFL version of a Donald Sterling situation. But I mean, it's the business wise, the smart thing to do is keep their mouth shut, let the players take the stand that they want to take. And I'm sure we'll see it would not shock me at all if week one every single player in the NFL takes a knee. That would not shock me at all. I don't necessarily think that it's going to happen, but I wouldn't be shocked at all if they did that. There's so much, and there would be so much power in that image.
It would be a tent pole in the progression of the Black Lives Matter movement, and part of the solution, a caveat for a way to try to get to a solution to try to end the systemic problem that is going on here. And
Mm-hmm.
the years and years of oppression that Black people have been involved with in this country.
Mm-hmm.
However, it is Roger Goodell and the NFL that we are talking about. So
Yeah.
historically, he will take a knee, figuratively and literally, to the public consensus because of the way he was raised with his father being a politician. He will take a knee and lean towards the public consensus of whatever issue we're talking about here. But let's take a quick break, talk about Feed Hudson Valley, and we will be right back. Feed Hudson Valley is a regional food rescue and harvesting network in the Hudson Valley operating throughout Dutchess, Orange, Ulster, Columbia, Greene, Putnam, and Sullivan counties. It links donors of prepared unserved food and fresh produce with nonprofits and food assistance programs. Through an app-assisted network of food donors, volunteers, and feeding agencies, Feed Hudson Valley facilitates the harvesting, processing, and distribution of locally grown and produced agricultural products, self-stable food donations, and prepared nutritious foods. The app is called Chow Match, and it is easy for volunteers and donors to download and use. Among the donors are restaurants, farms, food makers, stores, hospitals, and universities. The food assistance programs include food pantries, soup kitchens, and shelters. Volunteers are matched through the Chow Match app when a donation is available. They can then indicate they are available to make a run and then pick up and donate and deliver the food to the agency. The Feed Hudson Valley Network currently includes over 300 volunteers, 130 donors, and 95 receiving agencies. Last year, on average, Feed Hudson Valley rescued and redirected over 12,000 pounds of food each month. Feed Hudson Valley could use more volunteers and donors. To learn more, please visit feedhv.org. Again, that's feedhv.org. Now back to the podcast. Unfortunately, this is the part of the pod where technical difficulties come back to haunt this show again. The second half of the pod was going over the new baseball proposal for MLB that was highlighted in the post by an article by Joel Sherman yesterday. And because of technical difficulties in transferring the pod from a Zoom call to the editing software, the back half of the pod is in the void. And I'm upset about that because the conversation that we had about it was interesting and fun, and it went into a weird A-Rod angle in terms of documentaries. And you also missed Nick's movie recommendation, which was Killing Stalin on Netflix, going over the hilarious try to run for power after Joseph Stalin's death. It's by the guy who does Veep, the Julia Louis-Dreyfus vehicle. So he recommended that. I recommended True Romance. And we also talked about cars a little bit more, and it was just everything that you would expect from a podcast with Nick and I, and it felt like old times. You know, to be frank, that this podcast was the first time that I really sat down with Nick for a prolonged period of time and talked to him since the pandemic hit, and it's sad that it went into the void. Just chalk that another one up for technical difficulties. But at the end, we also went over it being the 199th episode and how incredible the run has been since episode 1. Nick was the first guest on this podcast, and now he's the last guest of the 100s of the pod. And I got a special guest coming on later in the week talking about a non-sports topic. It's a podcast that I've wanted to do for a long time, and we're going to hit on it finally for episode 200. And, you know, thank you to everyone who listened. Last month was the best month of the podcast by far since the inception of the podcast, and I can't thank everyone who's listened to this podcast enough. Please keep it up. It's not going unnoticed. I'm happy that the pod is growing. I'm happy that, you know, this hard work is paying off to, and I can't believe it. I really cannot believe how well the podcast is doing right now. So please keep liking, keep sharing, keep reposting, keep tweeting, keep putting reviews out on iTunes. It means more to me than you know, and thanks to all the guests that we've had on here and all the people that have made this podcast what it is. It's been a ride. It's been 2.5 years of shows, and I'm trying to get back to a more normal basis and a more normal schedule. We're working on it. We'll get there. And, you know, follow Nick on all social platforms at Nick Parodies. Follow me at NotTheFakeJLeo on Twitter, jdatasports.blogspot.com, and, of course, this podcast. And if you're new to the show, we do end it in a certain way. From the sweet words of Semisonic, it's closing time. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. Peace.